Hello, friends. Welcome back. Today, I want to talk to you about this expression. It's called to have an axe to grind. I've always understood it to mean the idea of sharpening an axe. You're grinding it until it's really nice and sharp so that you can go to war with it, so that you can deliver justice for some wrong that's happened, so that you can get revenge for something that's been done to you when justice isn't coming. It's about engaging in conflict for the intent of tearing down somebody. To have an axe to grind. Right or wrong, that's how I understand it. So when somebody does something to somebody else, the person that was hurt and was wronged, think of it this way. They get a magical axe in their hand. It's called justice. Something's been wrong, it needs to have a consequence. It's, I don't want to say it's a universe thing, it's a God thing, because God is holy. God requires justice for all wrongs. So, in a sense, it's about us being in alignment with God. We're agreeing. These things are not supposed to happen. However, there is something interesting that happens. Sometimes we don't want to wait for authorities to deliver justice for us. We don't want to wait for God's justice. We want to get revenge. It's faster, it's more efficient, it's less costly, right? Not really. God says vengeance is mine, so we've got to let it go. We get our axe, we give it to God, is one way to think of it. But that leads to the idea of forgiving others. And think about it. A lot of people have a hard time forgiving others or themselves. And it's hard for a lot of reasons, for different reasons. I want to talk about a few of those reasons because we get stuck on these. But before I do, I forgot about something. You ever noticed that when others wrong us, we want justice to happen right away? But when we do something wrong, we want there to be forgiveness right away? Or that we want it to be okay that we're upset that somebody did something to us, but we don't think God's a good God when God's upset about something we do or humans do. Just an interesting contrast. So if we spend a lot of time grinding our axe instead of forgiving people, then we spend a lot of time and energy plotting how we're going to get even, or how we're going to make somebody else hurt like we do, or feel bad like we do. And it can get very time consuming. Some people will be entrenched in conflicts and grudges and bitter things for decades. And what they don't realize, what we don't realize, what I don't realize when I'm doing that, is that while it's cool that we can build trenches, while it's cool that we can get some sneak attacks in on the other person, other people in our lives that love us and know the other side of us, they miss out. They kind of miss the real us, the part that's loving and carefree and stuff like that. Because it will impact that part of us. Maybe not all the time, but it will have an impact. So we can impact our relationships and other things that way if we're always focused on something that happened. On the other hand, we spend a lot of time sometimes justifying why we're not forgiving somebody. And that also could be very time consuming. We can surround ourselves with cheerleaders who will agree with us that something bad happened and we should always be mad at them. Then we become like a garden where the weeds are watered and the vegetables are plucked out. We become abrasive. Others experience us as that person. It's abrasive, that person that's just hard to deal with. You've always got to walk on eggshells around them. Do we want to really be that person? So there's a way out. And the way out is forgiveness. But Pastor Jeff, I can't forgive. I hear that. I've been listening to people ever since I was old enough to listen. Forgiveness is a hard thing for different reasons. And a lot of times the reasons are not good reasons, but I will walk you through them and set you free. Sometimes we think we can't forgive because we can't forget, meaning we can't be amnesia about it. And we think, well, I can't press delete on that file in my memory and it's gone. It's just there. Whether I want to or not, I just know that it happened. And then we feel like we haven't forgiven. I have good news for you today. I don't think that's what forgiveness is all about. I know Paul says, forgetting the past, we move on. It doesn't mean that he had amnesia all of a sudden. It just means we're not going to act on the things that happened. We're going to act and move forward in a different way. In the Bible, when it talks about God remembering or not remembering, it's not about amnesia or not amnesia. It's about whether you act on something. For example, when he says, "I'll remember your sins no more, they are far as east is from the west." It just means he's not acting on the justice that we deserve. Or remember me according to your love, O God. It's not remember like, oh yeah, there's a picture of Jeff on the wall in heaven. It's about we want God to act towards us according to his loving kindness. So maybe that will help. So forgiveness isn't about being able to physically forget. So that might help. Even God remembers. He forgives us at the cross, right? And yet he retains knowledge of what we've done, because on the end, when he comes again, there'll be a judgment. We'll all have to give an account. He knows everything that we've done, but he's not going to act on it if we're covered in the blood of Christ at the cross for forgiveness. So that's one reason that we have trouble forgiving, and now maybe we can lay that aside. The second one is when we forgive somebody, we feel like maybe we're saying that what happened to us doesn't matter. And that's not it at all. We all sin against God. Sometimes they're little sins, sometimes they're big sins, but they all mattered. To get into heaven, you've got to be pure and spotless, sinless. So even the little ones keep us out. It's like going outside and you get your feet all muddy in spring in Wisconsin. It's a season of mud. And you're coming into the house and your wife or your mother or your grandmother has white carpet. Are they going to let you into their house with muddy shoes? Nope, you're going to have to take off your shoes and get cleaned up, right? It's kind of the same idea. So there's got to be a cleansing. So that's why Jesus went to the cross, the innocent for the guilty. He endured the consequence that's required for sin, suffering and death. So hopefully that helps. If you forgive somebody, you're not saying that what they did to you doesn't matter. And Jesus says, somebody sins to you, go and talk to them. Just like God talks to us. He says, 10 commandments. I love you, but 10 commandments. You offended me this week. He tells us what we've done wrong, the law. In the same way, we need to go to people that hurt us and lovingly and with respect and with a gentle tone say, you know, when you did that, here's how it impacted me. It hurt my feelings because of yada yada. And I had to go to the store and replace something when you broke it. I didn't really have time to do that. And so it really ruined my day. Please reconsider how you're doing things. So that's the idea, that things do matter, but we have to approach it in the right way, because we're supposed to bear with one another and gently restore other people, because that's what we're going to want when we've done something wrong. Somebody comes in yelling at you for something you did wrong, you're not going to listen to them. You're going to get your axe and go to fight. That's why he says go gently to share those things. Okay, the third thing is forgiveness. Doesn't mean that what they did was okay. It really wasn't bad, and that's what we're saying by forgiveness. No, we're not. Because a wrong is a wrong, a sin is a sin. Everyone matters, great and small. That's again why Jesus went to the cross. So there is justice for all. When we forgive, it still matters. Jesus had to go to the cross. They'll still be having to face Jesus. They'll either accept his forgiveness or they won't, and they'll endure the real consequences for their sins. The fourth one is forgiveness means you have to then trust somebody or like them. That one's hard for a lot of us. That's why we don't choose to forgive in our mind. But I'm going to challenge that line of thinking. to me, forgiveness is a gift. It's something that you do. It's something where you're saying, I'm not coming after you anymore. Trust and liking are relational terms. So forgiveness kind of creates the potential for relationship. We're not at war anymore. We're coming out of our trenches so that we can communicate if we want to restore a relationship, or we can go our separate ways and not track each other down. So liking somebody and trusting somebody, these are relational things that happen over time. They happen through shared experiences. Apart from forgiving somebody, when you're meeting somebody that's new, right? Trust and liking them happens as you interact with them, as you do things together. I think that's a part of why God tells us to go and do mission work, because then we're doing something together. Okay, so if you're going to forgive somebody, you're not having amnesia, you're not saying it doesn't matter, you're not saying it wasn't wrong, you're not saying that I trust you, you're just saying, what are you saying? That's a good question, right? So, okay, take that proverbial axe. Somebody does something wrong, you've got the axe. That sense of justice, something needs to happen. Forgiveness is taking it, instead of burying it in the other person, you bury it in a stump of wood, the cross. And you say, you know what? I'm going to choose not to come after you. I'm going to choose not to try to hurt you, because God has forgiven me. He buried the axe that he had for me at the cross. So now, that's a different way of looking at it. So what happens if we choose to bury the axe and we say, I'm not going to be out to get you. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm not going to war with you anymore. Then what we can do with that axe is we can turn it into a tool. We can use it to chop wood. If you chop wood when you're out camping, what can you do with chopped wood? You make a fire. Fire's warm. It's nice. It's beautiful. It's cool. One of the things I thought was curious about Wisconsin when we moved here is a lot of neighborhoods have like a community fire pit, and people would just go out and make fires for anyone that wanted to come. That's the idea, is that when we forgive others, we create the potential for reconciliation or relationship, or at least to live at peace going separate ways. And if you think about that campfire, it gives off warmth. And over a campfire, you can cook camping food, right? Who doesn't love camping food? Sometimes it's the best food in the world. It's the food you look forward to. And so if we forgive, we can turn the axe into a tool to create fire that allows us to cook food. And if it's a campfire setting, think about it this way. There's something about being camping that's more relaxed. Everything's messy anyway, right? No one's putting on any special show. Things get forgotten, and you learn to laugh at yourself. You learn to laugh with others, not at others. And it's easier, I think, sometimes to own what we've done because you're camping. You just what you do. And it's easier to forgive, I think, around a campfire because it makes sense. There's the spirit of it. It's just, why fight when you could be enjoying everything out here? And that's the idea of God forgiving us and us then forgiving others, is that we create a different atmosphere. We create different opportunity to interact. I think this is why Jesus says, go and do mission work, y'all, because when you do things for others, whether it's something in the camping ground or it's something in your place of work or whatever, you do something for somebody else, people see you differently. And if we go and do that with people that we've forgiven, maybe our spouse, maybe our kids, maybe our parents, maybe our friends, go and do something that's helping somebody completely different. It helps you then to see the side that you were missing before. That's where the like and the trust can eventually happen. Start small, especially if the trust was a bad trust break. Start small. So anyway, I hope that this little talk about forgiveness is helpful. The readings today from the gospel says, God's forgiven us a great debt. Let us then forgive the debt that others owe us. It's not as big. Joseph, his brothers sold him into slavery, a terrible wrong. It's like human trafficking. But he chose to forgive them. He said, I want relationship more than revenge. He said, I even realized that through the bad that happened to me, a lot of good happened within me. A lot of blessings came to me. A lot of growth happened that wouldn't have happened otherwise. And I'm just accepting of that at this point. Maybe that will help us to forgive those that have wronged us, to realize the greater scheme of things, some good things have come out of this. Why don't I just forgive, bury the hatchet, and move on? Lastly, the second reading from Romans, Paul's saying, look, there's a whole lot of things that don't really matter in the bigger scheme of things. And so with these things, don't fight about them. Just, hey, how is that diet plan working for you? How is your treating this day as a special day working for you? Just be supportive and friendly about it. In the end, they have to answer to God whether they're wasting their time or not. So go back to the idea of the campfire setting. If we're living as the idea of we're forgiving people, we're agape loving people, we're building the campfire, that atmosphere in the lives around us, you don't have to fight. You can just enjoy. Somebody's brought this new camping item. Check it out. See how it works for them. Somebody else wants to try this kind of thing camping. See how it works. If it's cool and it works, try it out. The same way in relationships, Your husband and wife likes one thing or another thing. Go and try your spouse's activity with them. It's not going to hurt anything, and you'll have fun and make some good memories. At church, people have different ideas about stuff. Just try something for a while and see how it works. Learn a little bit. Have fun with it. It goes back to, do we have the faith of a child that looks to God and says, I'm forgiven, I'm going to forgive. You want to play God, I'm going to play too.